First, let's do some Instagram shoutouts. First up, we have Sohab Mir sharing a shot of his Seiko 5 day date, which is also his first mechanical watch and a great start to a lifelong obsession. Next is a mouth-watering shot by M. Larson 83 of his Tudor Pelagos and its impressively loomed bezel, the ultimate tool watch. Here we have Dalton wearing a very nice vintage Seiko while he gives his lovely Rolexes a bit of a rest. Closing these out is the wrist of Dodi with an awesome shot of his Macara sea turtle and its impressively eye-catching case. Thank you all for sharing your great wrist shots. Don't forget to post your wrist shots to Instagram or Twitter using hashtag cgwatchfam. Now we move on to my current wrist affair. That's coming up right after this. This beautiful Goliath is the Citizen Grand Touring Sport, and I'd like to thank my father for lending it to me for the last few weeks in order to put together this review. As you can see here on the side, I have all the specifications, and for those of you that might not be aware, the 9012 is essentially Citizen's Miyota 9015 that they keep for their own use. The first and most striking part of this piece is its incredible blue dial and bezel, in addition to this pronounced crown and guard. Lending to the absolutely appealing dial is the anti-reflective sapphire crystal, which, to be perfectly honest, is one of the best AR applications I have ever seen. At some angles, it is absolutely invisible and makes you feel like you can reach right through and touch the dial. The bezel is a very confident ratcheting bezel with the slightest play and feels very secure. The only loomed portion is the pip at the 12 o'clock position. Moving on to the dial, you find some incredible attention to detail, which includes the applied Citizen name. The first thing is almost easy to miss, and it's the subtle sandwich-style dial executed as the inner minute track of the dial. The inner track is cut out and has the orange-colored countdown portion from the first minute to the 15th, with a color that's more silver than white for the rest of the minutes. At the 3 o'clock position, you find the very nicely framed date window. It's cut out and recessed from the main dial, which gives it a very nice picture frame look as opposed to the conventional plain square. The hour markers stand tall and nicely polished, and the way they're applied make them seem at some angles like they're just floating at the top of the dial. The minute and hour hands would almost look skeletonized in style if it weren't for the lume that's applied to the cutout portions of each one. Matching their style is the counterweight on the running seconds hand, which also has lume applied to its spear-like tip. In terms of legibility in the dark, in addition to the lume bezel pip and hands, there is lume on the outer portion of each hour marker, making reading the time in the dark an absolute pleasure. While I can see that this may not be enough lume for some of you lume junkies, it was more than enough for me. If you turn the case around, you'll find the display back highlighting Citizen's 9013 in-house movement with a nicely customized rotor, which is essentially an ETA 2824 equivalent with all the same features including hacking and hand winding. The most noticeable difference between the two is that the rotor on this is a bit louder than a 2824, and a flick of the wrist can send the motor off to the races. The finish on the case is particularly impressive, with a mix of defined and well-transitioned polished and brushed surfaces. It sports almost a 3-tier case design, with the polished bezel up top, leading down to the second tier with a brushed surface and polished chamfered edge that leads you to the nicely brushed lugs. The crown guard won't be to everyone's liking, though it'll make most of us think of a Panerai style. It's more Omega Proplof in its execution, and I had no comfort issues with it on my wrist. Operating the crown is accomplished by pulling out the outer portion of the guard, then you unscrew the crown and manipulate it as you normally would. The bracelet is equal to the case in detail and finishing. Though I only wore it on the bracelet for one day, I didn't want to scratch up my dad's bracelet. It features both brushed and polished surfaces that complement the finishing and has a fold-over clasp with hidden double push-button release and is nicely signed. There's certainly one word that cannot be used to describe this watch, and that's understated. And it's one of my favorite things about it. Everything about it is pronounced, and when I wear it, it demands my attention, which I'm more than happy to give. Those of you on Instagram and Facebook have seen how much I've enjoyed wearing and pairing this full-figured beauty with different straps and bands. While my wrist is only 6.5 inches and I was a bit worried about its 44mm size, I've actually worn it very comfortably. If you aren't a fan of bigger watches with a weight to match, then this might not be the piece for you. But if you're looking for a muscle and style that can match you step for step, then you can find it in the Grand Touring Sport. Prices for this piece vary and average about $700 US, and in my opinion, it's worth every penny and more. If you enjoyed this review or found it useful, please slide on over and give it a thumbs up. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. That's it for this one. CG out.